I thank you, God, for most this amazing day, for the leaping greenly spirits of trees and a blue, true dream of sky, and for everything which is natural, which is infinite, which is yes.
I, who have died, am alive again today. And this is the sun's birthday. This is the birthday of life and of love and wings, and of the gay great happening in illimitably earth.
How should tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, breathing any lifted from the no of all nothing, human merely being, doubt unimaginable you?
Now the ears of my ears awake, and now the eyes of my eyes are opened.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Easter. It is a day of hope and promise and celebration. Special thanks to Dorothy Anderson Perales for that amazing opening. Dorothy, you are a blessing for this congregation. This morning, friends, we have a number of things to share with you. I want to first of all welcome all of you who may be visiting us for the very first time or who have not been with us in a while. I'm Deb Weiner. I'm the Developmental Director of Faith Development for Children here at First Parish in Bedford, and I am so glad that you have joined us today. After this service, I want to invite you all to join us in a virtual community hour of time of sharing and connection. You are most welcome. And as I mentioned, I do have some other announcements to share with you. First of all, this congregation, as you know, does not exist from some other source, but through the gifts of its members and friends and those who believe in the messages of Unitarian Universalist faith that are being offered here. And it is stewardship time. It is time to pledge. And by now, I hope that those of you who have a connection to this congregation will have received your spring stewardship packet. Please check your mail. If somehow you did not receive information, please do contact our church administrator, Joan Petros, and she will get materials to you. After you've reviewed the materials, please go to the stewardship page on the congregation's website to fill out your pledge online. It's quick and easy. We thank you for helping to support First Parish in Bedford. Our membership committee also wants to encourage everyone once again to add photos to their entries in the online directory. Particularly during this pandemic time, it has been a bit of a challenge for some of us to stay connected to each other. Well, heck, not some of us, all of us. And the membership directory is one way for us to connect faces and names. So please take a few moments to go to the online directory. If you don't know how to do that, you can send a message to Joan Petros and she can direct you further. I also want to remind you that we take advocacy and connection to the equity and fairness of all people seriously. And there is a UU Advocacy Day coming up soon. You can be a part of this advocacy day that is coming up. So let me just share some of that information with you. This is from UU Mass Advocacy. And although this is something that would have typically happened in purpose, it will be online this year. We are inviting you to spend a couple of hours in advocacy training and orientation, which will happen in the next week. And then Advocacy Day will happen the following week on Tuesday, April 13th, I believe is when it will start. And you will be able to connect with your state senators or representatives in the early afternoon. Annie, I believe, is putting a link in the chat, which gives you a connection to more information about UU Mass advocacy. And I hope that you will check that out. Perhaps finally, but certainly not least, I want to mention to you that closed captioning is available for our services. And if you look at the bottom of your Zoom window, you should see an option for you to open closed captioning. And this is a great assist, and we are grateful to the works of our Access for All team in making this possible. And I said it was last, but actually it's not. There is one more really important thing, which is that we are having an Easter egg hunt today, and we are so excited that that is back. We couldn't do it last year. So children and youth up through and including grade 7 are invited to come to the church today at 12 o'clock noon and to meet outside the front door of the church. That's the one that's pictured in that image that Webb has put up to hunt for Easter treats. Please bring a bag or a basket with you to collect your goodies. And also please bring at least 1 can of healthy, unexpired food for our food drive. And we thank you for that. We're looking forward to seeing lots of you. Make sure you have your mask, and we will have hand sanitizer for you there. So welcome again, my friends. It's now time for us to join in our unison affirmation. The slide will come up so that you can follow and read along, although we are muted. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. So may it be. And now, friends, continuing on mute, I hope nevertheless that you will sing out as we enjoy the Easter hymn, Lo, the Earth Awakes Again, presented by our sibling UU congregation at Eno River in North Carolina and their Eno River Singers.
Lo, the earth awakes again. Lo, the earth awakes again. Lo, the earth awakes again. Hallelujah. From the winter's bond and pain. Hallelujah. Bring relief and flowers spring. Hallelujah. To adorn this happy day. Hallelujah. Once again the word comes true. Hallelujah. All the earth shall be made new. Hallelujah. Now the dark cold days are o'er. Hallelujah.
I'm wondering if anybody else felt like it was a miracle that week in March when for the first time this year it became warm and sunny. I think it was in the early 60s and the low 60s in the temperature, and the sun was out, and oh my goodness, it just felt amazing. Did anybody else feel like that week felt like a miracle to you? Yes, it did. And it's funny because I've lived the vast majority of my life in parts of the United States where that cycle happens every year. I've lived in the Midwest and the Northeast for the most part, and it happens. Every year it happens. Winter happens, it gets dark, it gets cold, it's rough. And then one day you start to feel it. You can feel it in the air, and you can smell it, and you can feel it in all the people you see out walking and riding their bikes. And you're like, oh, it came back again. And somehow, even after many years of experiencing that, it always feels like a miracle. And we celebrate that miracle in that hymn we just sang. And I have to say, as someone who practices Christianity in my personal spiritual life, I've sometimes had a little bit of a grudge against Lo, the Earth Awakes Again. Leave it to Unitarian Universalists, I thought, to take a song about Jesus rising from the dead and make it about flowers. And I thought, those aren't really the same, because flowers are supposed to grow every year, and that's not surprising. People are not supposed to come back to life from the dead. That is surprising. But this year, I kind of felt different when it became spring. It kind of felt like it was a surprise, even though it's normal and natural. And I think that's the thing about miracles for me, is that miracles are not so much about something happening that is not possible, but it's about something happening that feels really life-giving and surprising, even if you know it's something that can happen. And the other thing that makes me have that feeling of resurrection, that feeling that I think Easter is all about, of Jesus coming back to life from the dead when no one expected it, is when people rise up and choose life in the face of violence and in the face of oppression. And I can remember over the summer getting that feeling. I remember getting that feeling when George Floyd, a Black man in Minneapolis, was murdered. And he was murdered by police officers. And right now, that police officer who caused his death, who killed him, is on trial. And I remember that when people rose up and said, this is not the end of the story, we do not accept this death, we do not accept this violence, we say no. We say no to white supremacy and violence. I remember feeling like it was a resurrection. And that's what I think is so important about this story that people tell every year all over the world today. They tell a story about how a man who was poor and radical and threatening to a big, violent empire was executed. He was killed by the state, by his government, by the authorities. But even though he was killed, that was not the end of the story. And whether you think that his actual body got back up and walked again, or whether you think his followers just refused to accept that that was the end of his ministry, it was a miracle. And that miracle stayed alive and got passed on and has morphed into a million different types of ways of celebrating. And some of them have done a lot of harm, but some of them have also done some good. And so what I hope you can do today and every day is to pay attention to those miracles, whether they're the miracles that happen all the time, like feeling the sunshine on your skin and seeing plants grow and thinking, oh, life, it keeps happening no matter what. Or whether it's those moments where you are saying no to violence, no to death, no to racism. Those moments when you see people coming together and choosing life and love. Lean into those miracles and tell them over and over again. That's what Easter is all about.
Jambo, habari gani? Wageni mwakaribishwa, hakuna matata. Hello, how are you? Visitors, you are welcomed. There is no problem here. Welcoming is everywhere. Today, our welcome song comes from the country of Kenya.
Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa, Kenya yetu hakuna matata. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa, Kenya yetu hakuna matata. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa, Kenya yetu hakuna matata. Kenya nchi nzuri, hakuna matata. Nchi ya maajabu, hakuna matata. Nchi ya kupendeza, hakuna matata. Kenya yetu hakuna matata. Kenya wote hakuna matata. Hakwena, hakwena, hakuna matata. Hakwena, hakwena, hakuna matata. Amalali, amalali, hakuna matata. Amalali, amalali, hakuna matata. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa, Kenya yetu hakuna matata. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa, Kenya yetu hakuna matata.
I asked that this next reading be included in our order of service today because when I was a teenager a long time ago, my minister at the Third Unitarian Church in Chicago, his name was E.T. Edwin T. Burer, asked me to read this in a Sunday service. And it made me feel good to be asked. And there was something about the words and its meaning that I came to love, just the rhythm of it and the lilt of it. And I won't say that it propelled me into ministry, but maybe it said to me that this might not be such a bad gig after all. And today, as I read it, I'm not even sure that I agree with all the words in it. It has some things about the earth will never change. And well, that's pretty demonstrably false. But nevertheless, underneath it all, there is still something I love. Maybe it was I came to love the sound of my own voice. You never know. But in any case, I want to give thanks to Liv and Sophie and Isabel for joining me in this reading of Some Things Will Never Change. It is a responsive reading in our hymnal and in the hymnal prior to that. And it was written by Thomas Wolfe from You Can't Go Home Again. Liv, start us off.
Some things will never change. Some things will always be the same. Lean down your ear upon the earth and listen.
The voice of forest water in the night, a woman's laughter in the dark, the clean, hard rattle of raked gravel, the cricketing stitch of midday in hot meadows, the delicate web of children's voices in bright air, these things will never change.
The glitter of sunlight on roughened water, the glory of the stars, the innocence of morning, the smell of the sea in harbors, the feathery blur and smoky buddings of young boughs, and something there that comes and goes and never can be captured. The thorn of spring, the sharp and tongueless cry, these things will always be the same.
All things belong to the earth will never change. The leaf, the blade, the flower, and the wind that cries and sleeps and wakes again. The trees whose stiff arms clash and tremble in the dark, and the dust of lovers long since buried in the earth.
All things proceeding from the earth to seasons, all things that lapse and change and come again upon the earth, these things will always be the same, for they come up from the earth that never changes. They go back into the earth that lasts forever. Only the earth endures, but it endures forever.
The tarantula, the adder, and the asp will also never change. Pain and death will always be the same.
But under the pavements trembling like a pulse, under the buildings trembling like a cry, under the waste of time, under the hoof of the beast above the broken bones of cities, there will be something growing like a flower.
Something bursting from the earth again, forever deathless, faithful, coming into life again like April.
Thank you. It is still so good to hear our choir. You've heard me read this introduction to our offering before. It's from the writings of Annie Dillard in a book titled The Writing Life. And it really is about the art and craft of writing. But I think that it has meaning as well for what we're about to do in this service, and that is giving to assure our continued existence. Annie Dillard says, "One of the few things I know about writing is this: spend it all. Shoot it, play it, lose it, all right away, every time. Do not hoard what seems good for a later place in the book or for another book. Give it all. Give it now. The impulse to save something good for a better place is the signal to spend it now. Something more will arise for later. Something better. These things fill from behind, from beneath, like well water. Similarly, the impulse to keep to yourself what you have learned is not only shameful, it is destructive. Anything you do not give freely and abundantly becomes lost to you. You open your safe and find ashes. Now, you wouldn't want that to happen to you, would you? It's been said that we shall never regret acts of generosity. And as ever I say, freely we have received. Freely give. For the good work of this congregation and its work within and far, far beyond these walls, our offering will now gratefully be received. This is the first Sunday of the month, and ordinarily we share the plate with another organization, but because it's Easter and we've got other things to do, we're going to save that for next Sunday, when I believe our recipient will be UU Mass Action, and we'll hear from their director, Laura Wagner. Our offering, again, will now be gratefully received. You know, before I came to Bedford, I served a little Massachusetts congregation in the Blackstone Valley. Bonus points to those who know where that is. And that congregation was a little more traditional than we are. At Christmas time, people pre-ordered poinsettias to decorate the sanctuary and then take home or give to shut-ins. And likewise, at Easter, there'd be Easter lilies, trumpet lilies that would bedeck the altar and windowsills, and maybe there'd be a sunrise service too, or a pancake breakfast before church. And there we'd have as big a crowd as there would ever be all year. Many kids and adults with Easter bonnets and new dresses, dandy bow ties, Easter finery. So things were a little different when I came to Bedford. Yes, I have seen Christmas poinsettias here, though they seem to be forgotten pretty quickly. And mainly I recall picking up a lot of dead leaves and then composting the plants and chucking the pots. And when I came to church here on my first Easter Sunday with you, I recall wondering, where are all the people? There was not a big crowd. Well, there were more people in the sanctuary than I'm looking out at right now. I am the only one in this room. But it used to be that Easter at the First Parish in Bedford was very lightly attended. There were some parishioners who attended every Sunday except Easter. There were parishioners who were specifically allergic to Easter. Dot Ellis, are you here this morning? Maybe, but probably not. Well, I have seen some changes over the years, greater Easter attendance here this morning in the sanctuary, notwithstanding. And I see some of you sporting Easter finery, even today in your living rooms. I just, for example, am wearing my dress sweats this morning. These days, our congregation has, I'd say, a mixed approach to Easter. Some people remain allergic. Some people like the peeps and the egg hunt. The fully vaccinated may actually share a holiday meal together this afternoon. And for some, there's also a new spiritual curiosity and thirst. Witness our solemn Good Friday service, for example. Nevertheless, in general, religiosity in this country is in great decline. Formal religious affiliation has pretty much fallen off the cliff. That Blackstone Valley congregation I served, it had 2 historic church buildings. And then a few years ago, due to declining attendance, they said goodbye to 250 years of history, and they sold one building for, maybe $150,000. And now, today, meeting in the other building, there are perhaps 15 people attending this morning. I'm not sure. One academic study published in 2017 predicted that if mainline religion continues its free fall at the same rate as it is at present falling, there are only 23 Easters left. It will be wiped out. Bye-bye. That study was in 2017, so how many Easters are left now? 17, 18, not many, but counting. Tick, 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 tick. Now, I do recall one First Parish Bedford family that emotionally at least longed for a more traditional Easter. And so for a few years, they tried going into Boston to attend Trinity Church in Copley Square. And they really did like the trumpets. We've had trumpets here. A few, I think I recall, maybe. I do think we could use some more trumpets. But after a while, even that family had a hard time with Trinity's theology and the words that went along with Easter, the standard common Easter story. A lot of times when it comes to a lot of traditional Christianity, at least the way it is typically presented, I'm somewhat allergic to Easter too, or maybe I'm just agnostic. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Easter. I am not depressed. Brad, I'm looking at you. At least I'm no more depressed than any reasonable human being is or should be right now. Yes, Easter is a hump in the year. If we've made it through a long, isolated, harder than usual winter and made it to today, well, we just might emerge from the confinement of our tombs and bunkers and emerge into the warming sunlight, and we just might make it to that second coming called the new normal. Vaccination, if not resurrection, immunity, if not immortality. In these times, I truly celebrate the Easter stamina of those who even sometimes are able to rise from the bed, let alone rise from the dead. And I know that some of us are able to do neither. Some of us have said, and I quote one parishioner who said, "I'm damn near dead." In a Christian church newsletter I received, their pastor trumpets, "On Easter morning, Jesus conquered the last enemy, death itself. We were set free, free from sin, free from death. You are free. Christ is risen, risen indeed. Happy Easter to all." I guess I'm just not feeling it. I mean, I do get an Easter feeling with the warming of the weather in this part of the world, though have you noticed that there has been a recent heat wave in Europe and in other parts of the world? It was 114 degrees in India last week, and that cannot bode well. I do get an Easter feeling with rising rates of vaccination, though an awful lot of people are left behind, and it's so much worse in other parts of the world. And 550,000 people in this country alone are dead and not coming back for hugs. And yes, I get an inkling of an Easter feeling when I read a New York Times headline last week that said, "Biden places race at the center of agenda," even as we all know that there is so far, 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 far for us yet to go. And I also get some Easter satisfaction that even corporate behemoths like Coke and Delta Airlines and Major League Baseball are revolted by the assaults on voting rights and democracy in places like Georgia. That's a little resurrection. And there is a bittersweet Easter feeling when we can celebrate our Maria's freedom as we did just a week ago, even when she continues to remain in jeopardy, and when so many immigrants and others remain unfree and suffering and dead. And there's a bittersweet Easter feeling when a large crowd of Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and allies gathered on the Burlington Common, as some of us did on Wednesday, to affirm that hate must have no home here. This is another little resurrection, a rising up. And there is a bittersweet Easter feeling when folks, sometimes a lot and sometimes just a hearty few, gather still every Friday on our common to affirm that Black lives matter and to denounce hate. And this last Friday, folks gathered a second time that evening to vigil for the life of the murdered Rhonda Padalina and to affirm that her death must not be the end of the story. These two are little resurrections. All this and more about our public and private lives is so bittersweet, and it is so close to 50-50. In the United States Senate, it is 50-50 with Kamala Harris to tip the scales. Or is it Joe Manchin? I am reminded of the Zen saying, 7 times down, 8 times up. If I were handicapping the Kentucky Derby and resurrection were a horse, I say resurrection wins, if only by a nose, I hope. Nearly every day I see families who are battered by mental illness, by health crises, family struggles, even by death, impending and actual, who nevertheless wake up most mornings, persevere. Maybe they don't rise to the occasion, but somehow they do manage. These are little resurrections. In our cities and towns and all across this country and all around the world, there are people who, despite brutal, soul-crushing repression and attempts to deny their very identity and being, these people arise and rise up with a befitting indignation and stupefying, self-deprecating, persistent dignity. This morning on the news, I heard that demonstrators, particularly women in Myanmar, demonstrating for democracy and an end to repression, had specially decorated Easter eggs with messages of hope and resistance. Today, I celebrate all our little resurrections. With William James, I say, I am done with great things and big things, great institutions and big success. And I am for those tiny, invisible, molecular, moral forces that work from individual to individual, creeping through the crannies of the world like so many rootlets, or like the capillary oozing of water, yet which, if you give them time, will rend the hardest monuments of human pride. Just as I was finishing this sermon, I was sent this joke, and I thought I might save it for a later time, but Annie Dillard told me not to save it for a later time. And so it has taken me a while, but I have decided that this joke is not irreverent. It may take you a while to come to that realization too. And so it's a knock-knock joke. Knock, knock, who's there? Jesus. Jesus who? Jesus Christ, open the door. Open the door, my friends. Yeah, it's a risk. Open the door to the hope that it'll be 7 times down and 8 times up. Resurrection by a nose. Open the door. Let's hope. Who knows how many Easters are left to us? Open the door. But under the pavements, trembling like a pulse, under the buildings, trembling like a cry, under the waste of time, under the hoof of the beast, above the broken bones of cities, there will be something growing like a flower, something bursting from the earth again, forever deathless, faithful, coming into life again, like April. Jesus Christ, open the door. May it be so.
Thank you, one and all.